Came to Believe, the spiritual adventure of AA as experienced by individual members. Welcome to the Sunday edition of Sober Readings, where each week I read a chapter from the book Came to Believe. Last week I read half of the stories out of Chapter 10. This week I'll finish up the rest of the stories in Chapter 10, which will also finish out the book. Chapter 10 is titled, In All Our Affairs. I'll read the chapter opening and then we'll get right into the stories. Service gladly rendered, obligations squarely met, troubles well accepted or solved with God's help, the knowledge that at home or in the world outside we are partners in a common effort, the fact that in God's sight all human beings are important, the proof that love freely given brings a full return, the certainty that we are no longer isolated and alone in self-constructed prisons, the surety that we can fit and belong in God's scheme of things. These are the satisfactions of right living for which no pomp and circumstance, no heap of material possessions could possibly be substitutes. Bill W. And that can be found in the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 124. All right, so let's get right into the stories from Chapter 10. The first story is titled, Getting Ahead. Most alcoholics I have known, including myself, wanted to get ahead. If we didn't, well, there was nothing so rosy as the dreams of success and glory which subsequently came out of the bottle. Such fantasies are the warp and woof of the active alcoholic's life. I think that one of the main differences between an active alcoholic and a recovering alcoholic can be expressed as a matter of tense. The active alcoholic tends to live in the future or in the past. The sober alcoholic, using part of the philosophy he learns in his AA experience, lives or strives to live in the present. The non-drinking alcoholic discovers in AA that you cannot get ahead until you learn to be here. We discover from our serenity prayer that one of the things we cannot change is time. The here and now is the only reality, whereas in the unreal world of the drinking alcoholic, there was only yesterday and tomorrow. The grace of sobriety lies in accepting the fact that the past is non-existent and the future exists only at the present. I think of a certain morning on which I woke up and said to myself I would not take a drink that day. I had done this many times before, and each time I had failed. But on this morning, for some unaccountable reason, another voice told me I was a liar, that I couldn't not take a drink that day. Immediately, the stage was set for what was, to put it mildly, the most unusual day of my life. The day on which my compulsion for alcohol was taken from me. The explanation is simple. When I said to myself, "You are a liar," I was thinking in the present. I didn't say, "If you go through the morning and take a drink in the afternoon, you will be a liar." Right then, I was empowered to do something about my predicament, because I recognized it as a present predicament and not a future one. So I saw AA and found the help I needed. In the very moment of acknowledging myself to be a liar, I turned out not to be one, in that instance anyhow. Ever since I became extricated from the turmoil of alcoholic living, it interested me to muse over this business of getting ahead. In the excesses of my alcohol-inspired ambition, I used to imagine that to get ahead I would need to be like some preternatural bulldozer, plowing its way upward and onward, plunging inexorably over the embankments of life, grinding, heaving, snorting, reckless of obstacles, impelled by the virtues of ambition and the seductions of success. The kind of success that comes effortlessly to us from a barroom bottle. I did not know then that if you want to get ahead with any degree of peace, you must first learn to stay here. It takes guts to stay here. It takes self-discipline and resolution. Anyone with sufficient energy and a one-track mind can get ahead. Witness the robber barons, the dictators, the demagogues. But to stay here, you must know where you are before you can know where you are going. You must seek before you can find, and you must ask before you really learn to seek. It takes humility to ask, patience to wait for the answer, and faith that the answer will come. These, it strikes me, are hardly bulldozer virtues. I like to think that staying here provides a clue to the practice of the 11th step. We don't improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him by projecting into the future. After all, even the hereafter begins with here. Manchester, Massachusetts. The next story is titled A Practical Philosophy. By being in the environment of AA, I've been sober for over 8 years, and I've received help from a lot of practical philosophy, a way of thinking that produces real results. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. The third step can be a tough order, practically if one is not very religious or if one has some problems in the God area, as I do. Rephrasing helped me quite a bit. God as I don't understand Him, and turn my will and my life over to the care of good. These two ideas let a heathen like me dismiss the religious question and begin to experience the spiritual benefits of AA. For many of us, our understanding of God ends at the frustrating point of not understanding Him. It was a great relief to me to learn that I simply didn't have to understand. After all, you don't have to know how a tree grows to make a fence out of wood. And AA is practical. Trying to understand God before putting step 3 to work is my idea of an impossible task, and impractical. Practically, then, how can one work this step? My suggestion is that it's helpful to stop trying to work it. Why? Because trying to work step 3 may be nothing more than another way of trying to understand God. Again, that's impractical. Many people are determined to make work out of things that require no work. We have come to believe that nothing good comes without effort, and that self-indulgent is always bad. My opinion is that step 3 requires no work at all, and that it can best be implemented by the most pleasurable self-indulgence. Let me illustrate with a little experience that happened to me after I had been in AA for about a year. My job situation was, I thought, quite bad. I could barely get by on what I made. Suddenly, a new opportunity presented itself. The new job would require a move, and it was with a company well known for hiring and firing people without regard for them. Yet the starting salary would be more than 1/3 greater than I was getting. My old job had been a constant and powerful worry to me from the moment I got sober. At the time of the new offer, I had been stewing and fretting over it night and day for many months. I had, in effect, been trying to change the job situation by force of my own will, writing memos, complaining, attempting to mold the company to my way of thinking. Well, there were 40 people there besides me. I couldn't change them all. Now that offer came and complicated my thinking even more. I didn't want to move. I was becoming part of a great AA group and had found many AA friends. I was torn between the chance for a big salary and the security of an existing job, between moving to a strange city and remaining with the AA friends I had recently acquired. It may not seem like much of a worry to someone in prison, for instance, but to me, at that time, it was enough to send me to the doctors for stomach pills, to ruin my mood, and to totally disturb my life. Finally, I went to see a friend in AA who had many years of top-quality sobriety. He didn't talk to me about step 3, at least not by name. What he said was, "Why don't you just do nothing for a year?" I asked him what he meant. He advised me to stay at my present job. He suggested that I simply stop worrying about whether I was making enough money or not, that I just go to work every day, enjoy the luxury of not worrying about my situation, take each day as it came, and do what seemed best that day under the circumstances, and do this for 1 year. Think of that. A year off from worrying. Better than a paid vacation. Well, I did it. I was so tired of worrying about that lousy job that it was a pleasure just to go to work each day and not worry. In other words, I gave up. But in a very healthful way. My mood improved, and so did my work. By the end of the year, I had been promoted twice and had twice been given a salary increase. I have since moved to another company, but with good feelings between me and my former associates. That was the most valuable year of my life. I learned in the most practical way the truth of that old cliche that you can change only yourself, not the rest of the world. I learned that you can work step 3 by not trying to work it. You can work it by taking a year off from worrying. At the end of the year, if you've enjoyed not worrying enough, take another year off. Each of us has to do something each day. Work in an office or a factory, soldier, take care of a house, or whatever. None of us has to understand God or worry about things beyond our control. We can indulge ourselves in the luxury of not worrying. Any of us can handle just one day. All each of us has to try at is our own job, our own family life. We don't have to try fixing up the whole world or understanding what no theologian or any faith has ever understood. We simply stop messing in God's business. And in my opinion, when we stop messing and stop worrying, we have turned our will and our lives over to God, or good, as we understand or don't understand Him. San Jose, California. The next short story of chapter 10 is titled Ecstasy. We ought not to settle for tepid AA, for half measures in taking the steps, or for too much of the stale and flat in our sober days. Not if we want to stay sober. No, I think we have to keep looking for something better than dullness, better than average living, better than mediocre spirituality. In an article called The Search for Ecstasy, written for the AA Grapevine, philosopher Gerald Hurd said, "It would seem that none of us is living in a sufficiently toxic way so as to be able to meet the stresses to which we are now bound to be exposed, without breakdown. Alcoholism, like all addictions, is not at base a search for utter sedation. It is a desire for that ecstasis, that standing out from the landlocked lagoons of conformity, out onto the uncharted high seas where the only map is the star-set heavens. Breathes there anywhere a sober alcoholic for whom this passage is not deeply meaningful? A few years ago, I sat in a New York bar talking to a newspaper man who had just lost another job for drinking. He was interested in my AA story, but he was lit up like a Christmas tree, angry and thoroughly uninterested in any gab about regenerating him that day. A thought came to me. I said, "You know, H, I think one of the great pleasures of way out drinking is just that feeling of being miles apart from the boobs. You're running on a different track, different clock, different music. Really existentialist kick. On the knife's edge of pleasure, pain, progress, disaster." And more stuff to that effect. I saw that I had an attentive listener at last. H said that was it exactly. It was living way out that appealed to him, disasters or no. Living like the boobs was a bore, a drag, and a cursed impossibility. I think now that this thoroughly unsuccessful 12-step effort, I pray H may be in AA somewhere by now, helped me. I've never since stopped being aware of the fact that, as an alcoholic, I had better not set my sights on being just like everybody else, just as ordinary, just as unleavened. As a matter of fact, I don't really know anything about being ordinary, that is, non-alcoholic. So I ought not set up some phony idea in my mind about normal living. No, let me stick with Mr. Hurd's approach for a while. His emphasis is the one for me. If as an alcoholic I am to stand out from the landlocked lagoons of conformity and stay sober, how am I to do it? Join a revolutionary gang? Go hippie? Take up yoga? But I have an answer. Take the 12 steps. Dull? Have I tried it? I certainly didn't attempt much beyond the first 3 steps my first couple of years in AA. My reaction to the last 9 steps was that they were put in to round out the picture. They were pious rather than practical. One hardly needed to go that far, and so on. But I had, along the way, a bit of perverse luck. I got into some rather heavy weather. Job, health, family, everything seemed to go soberly haywire all at once. And I was moved, I see it now as a spiritual shove, to try the 4th and 5th steps, inventory and confession. I didn't do a good job. I wrote some of the inventory, but not all of it. I told some of the wrongs, the pressing ones, but not all. Nonetheless, I had an exciting year of spiritual progress out of it. I was in some important way changed. There came a slowdown, as evidently there always must. I began to think steps 6 and 7 needed more work. Interesting, difficult, existentialist, knife edge of disaster progress, strange new awareness of God, of self. I saw that there could be no lagoons of conformity for the man who will face his character, confess it, become willing to change it, and ask God to change it. Dynamite. Dare I set it off? Can't I just sort of let the whole thing go and settle for modest, quiet, unexceptionable, not very spiritual, average living? After all, X can, and Y can, and Z can. Are they alcoholics? Well, no. And do I really know anything about their spiritual lives? Well, no. Back to me. I needed to be other. That's why I drank. I still need to be other. Having tried the toxic way of drugs and excess, let me try the tonic, in Hurd's phrasing, way of the steps, the way of health and joy. The steps are the specific medicine for the thing that's wrong, or right, it doesn't matter, with me, alcoholism. They are the way to be other, and sane, into the bargain. I've come this far. I know now that what is involved in taking the AA program entire, as the early AAs gave it to us, is not the prospect of turning into some sort of repulsive goody-goody. It's the threat of being truly alive, aware, and even perhaps ecstatic. I'm coming to believe that if I do not accept all of what this program offers, demands, but instead walk away from it as somehow more than I bargained for, I might get drunk. In other words, if I do not take AA's 12 steps seriously and in full, I cannot expect to be on the program. Vermont. Last but not least, the final story of Chapter 10 and of the book is titled, No Man is an Island. I was spiritually bankrupt long before AA entered my life and long before alcoholism took over like a parasite under my skin. I had nothing, no faith at all to cling to. I had no faith in man because along with my drinking I had lost faith in myself. I trusted no one, for others were but a mere reflection of my own self, and I could not trust me. I got sober in AA, and, like a miracle, the warm flood of reality I had feared for so long flowed over me, and I was no longer afraid. I began to worry why. Along with sobriety, something new had come into my life. I began to have concern for others. This word concern, along with its sister consideration, was an alien thing to me. I had believed myself capable of falling in love. I had thought myself a loving mother, but these emotions, I now perceived, had been reflections of my own self-interest. Nothing penetrated beyond myself. I began, in early sobriety, to feel compassion for other drunks, then for my children, then for my ex-husband. This compassion, a feeling accompanied later by love, opened up the door to a huge fortress within me, which had been forever locked. Now this was the strange thing. I was not, in sobriety, returning to my former state. I was not resuming a well state which I had left when I began to drink alcoholically. I was becoming, as I heard it put once, weller than well. In probing, via the fourth step, into my own personality, I found a new substance inside me. It had never been there before, even in childhood. Either a stone or an empty hole had been where it should have grown. Now something was taking root. I began to feel for others, to be able, for very brief moments, to put myself in their shoes. New worlds opened up. I began to understand the world about me. I was not the center of the universe. What a calamity it seemed to discover that. I was part of a gigantic, wonderful mystery. I could not probe it because I knew nothing about it. I could only circle it with a childlike curiosity. I am still circling about it. I shall never, nor shall any of us, discover the secrets of the universe, but we can accept their mystery, our part in them, and our lives and deaths, as something spiritual beyond our understanding. I began to watch my children. They were small, important people. I realized I had never treated them while I was drinking as anything more than little machines I had created, as if I had erected part of a Meccano set and been proud of it. I saw them begin to blossom as my treatment of them changed. I reached out a hand to help someone, sometimes even only by listening, and I felt a strange contentment at being able to help, an incredible discovery for me. I learned my own version of what spirituality is. It does not mean I have to be like the saints who claim to have direct advice and visions from God. It means I have to be concerned with my fellow man. Through this alone can I receive the grace of God, my higher power, for, in the words of John Donne, so long before AA, no man is an island. I began to feel a safety in my new spiritual feelings, until I was shaken up one night by an AA friend who said, "All right, so you can apply the third step in a spiritual belief in God to your personal life, but how can you accept the terrible calamities which happen around us every day?" I was faced again, perilously, with the questions of my religious but non-spiritual childhood. How can I accept a belief in God who allows such monstrous crimes against man as the black scenes at Buchenwald, Dachau, Hiroshima? I began to think frighteningly of death and suffering, not my own, but all humanity's. I began to question my new beliefs too much. I began to panic. I began to read beyond AA's literature for answers. Fortunately for me, before I had read too much about the subject of spiritual beliefs, an area which was only leading me to confusion, I realized I was asking for too much too soon. Wisely, I left the philosophy books to minds more capable than mine. I could not risk further mental confusion. I returned to the teachings of AA, which had already saved me from a life of torment. I needed to look no further than the 12 steps and the powerful wording of our Serenity Prayer, to accept the things we cannot change. My personal answer is there in the word accept. Accept man's place in the universal scheme. Accept my life as one minute particle of the whole. None of us can ever fathom the glories and uncharted regions of the universe, but we can live on earth and love one another. We can let in the beginnings of concern, compassion, consideration, and watch ourselves grow. With the tools and guideposts of Alcoholics Anonymous, we can learn a little of this precious gift, our gateway to human spirituality. New York, New York. And the last page of the Came to Believe book is the 12 steps. And like we do in the AA meetings, we read from cover to cover. So here goes. Step 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Step 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Step 7. Humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Step 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10. Continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And Step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. And that brings us to the end of the Came to Believe book. Next week, we'll start back at the beginning of the book and start with the foreword and then start on chapter 1. The reason that we do this with all the books in AA is not only so that we don't forget, but it seems that every time we read the same books over, I get something else out of it. And I hope you will too. So thanks for listening to Sober Readings today. I hope you'll tune in daily for the daily reflections, 24 hours, and As Bill Sees It readings. And if not, I'll see you back here next Sunday for the beginning of Came to Believe. Thanks for listening. And as always, just for today, don't drink, go to a meeting, and keep coming back. Have a great day. And as my friend Larry says, best day ever.